Well, welcome to our second workshop for the course planning and design for all modes of teaching series. Today, we want to talk a little bit of syllabus and course design logistics, because last time on Monday, we talked about which mode of teaching we should choose and what do you prepare and plan. So today we're actually gonna start putting in works about what we did on Monday. Very quickly, we'll do a little bit of welcome and discussion. And then I want to touch base about how do you set our learning paths using Canvas module. And that is the way to guide your students' learning. And then we have a wonderful faculty panel today. Again, 3 faculty join us. They're gonna share with us how they set out their syllabus and course to help students succeed. And then after that, we will touch base a little bit of syllabus design for different modes of teaching. So everybody should already be an expert. You are all the expert of developing a syllabus. So I don't need to teach you how to develop a syllabus, but there's some tips that you may want to modify your syllabus for different modes of teaching. So we'll talk about that. And finally, we'll have a breakout discussion. So I want to kind of recap about what we talked about on Monday. Remember, there are 5 different modes of teaching. Well, you know, and I would like to run a really quick poll to find out what modes of teaching do you plan to teach in fall. And you may not have an answer yet, and you can just tell us you are not sure yet. But, you know, traditional classroom is like normal, you know, just like before. Flip means that student will study the material at home so they can be prepared to do active learning in the classroom. So you budget the classroom time for interaction instead of delivering content. Hybrid means half-half. You know, you determine which part of the course you're going to deliver online, which part you're going to deliver in the classroom. And synchronous remote means that you meet with students in the Zoom meeting synchronously at the same time. And asynchronous online is like you recorded your lecture videos for students to watch, so you don't meet with student live. And some faculty will do the combination. You know, I will meet with student in Zoom. I am also gonna record some videos, so that will be the combination. And just kind of take some time to let us know if you know, if you decide what kind of modes of teaching you're going to deliver in fall. So we have about 22 people participated. Please just think about it. If you haven't decided, it's not a big deal, because that is exactly why we're here today. We're gonna use this week and next week to help you decide and plan how to put the course together. So if you haven't decided, feel free to choose you have not decided. So now we have 24 faculty voted. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to end the poll and share the result. So this particular group, as you can see, most of the number one, most of popular modes will be hybrid, which I thought is a great choice. And then we also have a lot of very wonderful 6 faculties are thinking about doing the flip model. And the 4 people are not decided. 3 people want to do traditional and 1 person want to do combination. So that's actually a nice little pause for us to think about. So now I want to get started with how do you guide students through a learning pathway? And a lot of faculty may not realize how important that is, but you know, it's gonna make you feel much easier during the quarter when you teach a class if you have a very clear pathway. Right now you're seeing this is 5 principles of quality online course design, but in my opinion, you know, they could be for all modes of teaching. And today we want to focus on building self-regulation support by using a learning pathway. So my question for you is that, let's pause for a second before we think about how to build self-support for students, or help students build the self-support, regulation support. What can you do as a faculty member to help your student build in that self-regulation support, you know, make them feel more self-motivated to take the class? either in the classroom or Canvas. And there's a link right here. Click on this here to go to a Google Doc. And if my instructional designer can help me to put the link in the chat, that'll be good. So I'm gonna click there. And then that's kind of put some information there. So I have a table here. And then please type in your answer in each of the box. What can you do to help students to build self-regulation support? What can you do in the classroom? What can you do on Canvas? So anyone wants to either verbally share with us your thoughts and we can type in for you on this document, or you can just type it in the document directly. And what I mean building self-regulation support is that how do you kind of guide students to make sure they are keeping up the learning path, because some student may be behind, some student may not be, following the path that you design. And how do you nudging them? How do you communicate with them to make sure that they have this very nice commitment about how they're learning? Is there anything you can do on Canvas? Anyone you want to just let us know? So some faculty say, you can bring questions to the class and based on the Canvas prompt in the class to help them to build that self-regulation. So there's a lot of answers now on Canvas. You can build a roadmap and it's kind of like a learning path, which we're gonna talk about it. Send students message. That's a very good idea. Modular course format. That's very good because no matter you said roadmap or modular course format, that's all about learning paths. So students have a very clear idea about what your expectations are and what do you expect them to learn. This is wonderful. Lecture by lecture detailed calendar. Yeah, calendar is very helpful. Bi-weekly announcement, that's always a good idea. So the student will expect that I will get an announcement every other week from my professor about what I need to do. Have student participate in discussion before the class. That is a great idea to really help students to really prep their mindset before they come to the class. This will be especially useful for flip and hybrid teaching. If you let students to do some discussion before the class to prep their mind, give them the discussion post with the element that require participation. Yeah, that's really good. And in the classroom, we now have more answers. Have them come with a question. Very good. I always say that if a student can ask a question, they must thought about the answer. Very good. Lots of turning point polls. Yeah, poll is always good. Have them discuss question in pairs. That's awesome. So please continue typing your answer here, but I want to go back to my slides here. We all kind of did a little thought about how we can help students building this kind of self-regulation support. I want to use a few minutes to talk about how do you take advantage of Canvas and building that learning path on Canvas. So on Monday, we talked about course planning worksheet, and some faculty who may think that is just not gonna be valuable or could be waste time, but our experience shows that many faculty let us know how much they appreciate to take the time to really think about their course. So if you have not done that, please join us tomorrow. We're gonna have another breakout to show you how to do it, or you can just schedule one-on-one. You can click on this link down there to download the document as well. So once you have this kind of plan in your head, you will be able to really think about how you're gonna put it on Canvas to really help your student to follow that step-by-step learning path. So this is one of the ideas. You can organize your Canvas module with different sessions. So readings, lectures, in-person class, homework, and reflection. This is just one example. And this particular example is you organize your learning path based on weeks. So there's other ways you can organize your learning path. So if you want to organize your learning path by week, you can just set a week 1, week 2, week 3. And it is important you always have something called week 0. It's the way that you put this kind of onboarding information for your student to really get oriented to the class before they begin. There's another way is also very useful for you to organize your learning path. It's that you organize by your class date. For example, if you meet your students Tuesday and Thursday, so you can have, say, class 1 on Tuesday, class 2 on Thursday, and you can kind of help them to figure out what do you do before the class, what you do after the class. So in that way, they are very clear about this. Is extremely useful for flipped classroom. So because every time students come to class, they're supposed to do some material so they can interact with their classmates. So you need to let them know what they need to prepare before they come. And after they finish class, what do you want them to do? So think about how you want to organize your learning path by day, that is by week, or by the class date. Another way to organize your learning path is really by the topics. A lot of the time, when I work with faculty, they always think about, oh my God, there are 10 weeks. I must come up with 10 topics. So it will be very clear every week I have a topic. Actually, you don't need to do that. Use this example on the left-hand side. You see this course only have 4 modules, and it's not even, in this way, 2 weeks for each of the module, 1, 2, but this one's like 3 weeks. And then 2 weeks again. So you can kind of do this kind of odd assignment without inserting 10 of the modules. And when you design your learning path, if you want to do the module base, then you actually have a module topic instead of the week topic. And you can kind of use this kind of title to let them know, okay, module 1 is for week 1 and 2. So what do you do in week 1? What do you do in week 2? In a way that will be very clear for your student to follow the instructions. I kind of go through this a little bit quickly, but if you download the slide, you will be able to see the example on the slides. So we talk about, you can actually, once you have the work, course planning worksheet kind of draft, you can convert that into the Canvas module. Tomorrow on Friday at 1 o'clock, we're gonna show you or help you to put this into Canvas. If you don't know how to do that, we can also answer questions. So feel free to join us. Now, here's some tips about how do you set our learning path for flip and hybrid teaching, since we're going to talk about different modes of teaching. So there's different examples, be very clear about face-to-face and online. When do you want student to meet you face-to-face? When do you want student to meet you online? What do you want student to do at home? What do you want to do in the classroom? You want to be very clear about that so you don't get confused and your student will be confused. Start each module or week with an overview video or some sort of roadmap page to guide students through the week. This is really nice. This kind of overview page is more like help your student onboard your student for that week. So they will have a very clear scope about what they're gonna experience. And that could be very important, especially when you want to teach your class in the flip and hybrid format. And finally, for the flip classroom, consider organizing your modules by class. So it's like Tuesday, Thursday, that's how we just showed it to you. So now you see this is some tips. Because the workshop time is so limited, so I don't have a lot of time to go through a lot of details. So what we do in these workshops is provide you as many resources as we can find. And these are really useful resources. For example, you can go to the course syllabus design that provided by University of Washington and get some ideas about what they suggest faculty to do. There's another website about course design structure to think about from the pedagogical approach when you plan your course. And that's exactly what we just talked about in the past few minutes is how do you really embed this pedagogical design into the course structure? And finally, there's an article, a research article talk about blended course design, of synthesis of best practice. And I thought that may be nice that you can see your peers, how they actually suggest you to design that blended course. And finally, visualizing learner engagement performance, to evaluate, optimize online course design. So there's different kinds of resources. I hope you will find it helpful for you to plan your course. The next session is the most exciting moment of our workshop, is that we're going to start a faculty panel session and letting our faculty panel guests to talk about how they organize and design their courses. We have Suzanne, Brandon, and Joel join us. They're so generous wanting to share with us their experience. And Jennifer is our instructional designer who will serve as the moderator. So Jennifer, feel free to start, unmute your microphone and share yours if you need to. Just invited the panel to start with the question. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Jennifer. I'm an instructional designer here at DTI, and I'll be facilitating today's faculty panel. So first, I just want to thank all of our panelists today for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to come speak to our audience. So thank you so much. So the topic for today's panel is going to be how do we organize and design our course, specifically in regards to setting up your learning path and, designing your syllabus. So before we actually get started with everything, let's do some quick introductions. So if you could briefly, tell us who you are and describe the course that you're teaching in the fall. So let's start with Suzanne. Go ahead.
Hi, Susie Bolson, and I'm on faculty in the Department of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry. I'm a professor of teaching, and I came to UCI in 2019, right before COVID hit. And I teach big biotechnology labs. And so these are 8-unit labs to first-year graduate students. And so I was all excited to get in the lab and teach in person, and then we went remote. So I've been teaching remote labs for about a year, and we're going back in person in the fall.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Brandon, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon. I'm an assistant professor of teaching in the Department of Criminology, Law and Society. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and names, especially over summer when we've had maybe a bit of a Zoom reprieve, but not enough opportunities to see everyone. And I'll be teaching 3 courses in fall. One's constitutional law, one's deviance, which is cross-listed, and then a new course, which is about building a media archive. So we use a lot of technology and public-facing platforms for that. So a lot of different models, and excited to speak with all of you and learn from all of you.
All right, thanks so much, Brandon. And Joel, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joel Veenstra. I teach in the Claire Trevor School of the Arts in the Drama Department. I teach a general introduction to theater course that is both a GE and for a requirement for all of our majors, and that has roughly about 100 people in it. And I've taught it now 3 times during the pandemic online. And now we're excited to be coming back in person again and applying the things that we learned through that, as well as I teach a collaboration class with all our incoming graduates. And we are going to be in person for that, as well as our productions that will be opening again in the fall in person, which we're excited about.
Awesome. All right, so to get the panel started, the first question for you guys is, so what instructional mode, I know some of you have already described it, but what instructional mode do you plan on implementing in the fall, and how has that impacted your course or learning path design? All right, so Suzanne, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, sure. So, it was funny listening to Megan talk, because I very much was trained by DTEI last summer and followed the format and was really happy with it. So again, I was remote last fall. I'll be in person this fall. But I built this course last summer for remote on Canvas using the modular format with weekly modules. And I was able to just copy that over and I'll use it even when we're in person. So a lot of the content has remained the same. The big difference is that the students will be actually doing the experiments instead of just listening to us talk about them or watching the TAs do experiments or that kind of thing. So I've certainly made adjustments, but it's really just updating content, which I would normally do year to year. But we had really virtually no online presence for this lab course prior to COVID. And now we have a huge online presence that we'll maintain even in person.
That's awesome. It's good to hear that you can very easily just repurpose your content, right, and go right into in person. So a lot of that content you developed remotely, is still relevant. Some faculty I know have expressed like, oh man, I spent all this time doing all this, all this content for remote, and now we're going back in person. But the good thing, the benefit is that actually all of that can be repurposed. So that's awesome. Thank you. Brandon, would you like to share?
Yeah, and I'll actually second what Suzanne said with thinking about the templates that are provided through DTI and of course the Digital Learning Institute. They can definitely be repurposed for all of these various formats. And I'll just show briefly, because I would like to double down on Megan's excellent point about the importance of headers, because once you have built up the template, well, this is just my landing page with my always teaching assistant, Bruce, who's here with us as well. But once you actually have those module components set up, I would just like to say that, and please let me know, it's of course saying my internet connection is unstable. It would never be a Zoom day without some tech issues, right? So I just wanted to show how, because this was a course that I had done in spring and now I'm repurposed to strictly in the remote space, but it was actually quite intuitive and really useful to be able to just slot around so much of that material that we used under different headings. And as simple as it seems, but that can really be stressed, is that because I know just from my lived experience, the first quarter that I was teaching remote, I did not do this and found that for making students self-regulated learners and for them working through the different module components, just chunking it out in the way that shows them specifically, this is what we're doing pre-class, this is what we're doing in class, this is what we're doing post-class, was extremely helpful. And this can be conceived of as in class versus out of class. If you're doing a more hybrid format, this can be conceived of as purely asynchronous, useful that even in an asynchronous format, or if you're staying online or remote, the students still conceptually thought of it as, well, what are we doing collectively and what are we doing on our own? So would just really love to double down on those components and stress that you should reach out to DTI and work with those pre-provided templates that they have, because they're really easy to repurpose.
Sorry, I know the internet was a little bit wonky there. Wasn't sure if it was just on my side or also, on both sides. But thank you so much, Brandon. That was awesome. I love the use of those headers, right? Really makes an impact in structuring your course, and definitely that pre-class, in-class, post-class, no matter what, whether you're doing hybrid, flipped, all online, still can be, still relevant. That's that structure to follow is really, really useful to students. So thank you for showing that. Joel, go ahead.
Absolutely. I would just echo what my colleagues have said in terms of the resources have been tremendously helpful. In particularly, we've found that during this pandemic period, we need to be more explicit with our instructions, and then we can apply that explicitness then to the course when we're back together again, and having all of the elements on Canvas. I find it helpful so that we don't have as many questions because there's clarity and just outlaying it out. As I mentioned, we'll be in person, but all of the online things will be directly applicable as well as another kind of resource and access point for folks to evaluate in the fall. And I love this kind of weekly navigation framework that my instructional associate helped me last year. Fanny, she's fantastic, laid out so that when you can go on this front page coming in, you can click on what week we're at, and it'll automatically jump to the modules so that you can know what we're going over. I did a similar thing to what Brandon referenced of denoting what we're doing within the class so that people could just kind of do a logical order and step through that. I also really appreciate the calendar feature that's within Canvas, and try to highlight with my students that they can utilize that. There's an export framework that you can export that and import it into your own personalized calendar, which is just a great resource to kind of help them, again, self-actualize as a learner and kind of track deadlines in that as well. So those are just a thing, kind of all these kind of online things can be getting directly applied no matter what format. So fantastic to have revised my content that I've taught a number of times in kind of even more explicit formats that then allow them to focus on what they're trying to learn versus how to kind of understand the makeup of the course.
Something that you said there that, I thought was particularly important is be very explicit in your instructions, right? That's essential, whether, you're doing remote, hybrid, online, especially in this type of environment where, it is a little bit confusing. It's confusing for us just trying to even figure out, when are we going to be in class, in person and all those things. So definitely having those very clear, explicit instructions, essential to helping the students learn. So thank you so much. All right, so for our next question, we're going to ask, how do you use your syllabus now to organize and prepare your students or your TAs for your course? What changes to your syllabus do you anticipate that you may need to make to prepare for fall quarter? So you can speak on any of those things. Suzanne, would you like to start first?
Sure. So when I saw this question, I got confused and had to have a phone call with Jennifer this morning. Just the idea of how do I use my syllabus to direct the course, because I don't. So I do use my learning path to direct my course. And then the syllabus is just a very crunched down version of my learning path. And I'll just share sort of what that looks like. And it's similar to what you saw from DTEI, just a tabular format based on weeks. And so I have all 7 days here because we have things that are due on Sundays. And so I've got assessments on here, topics on here. And this is the very first thing that I put together for the course. And once I have this put together, it all feeds into itself. So I can then take this and just move that directly into my Canvas site. Again, in this modular format, and import all that content into weekly modules. So so that is what I do. I start with the learning path, and then my syllabus is just a table with really bare bones kind of deadlines on it to make sure those are really explicit.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Yeah, so as part of our conversation this morning, I was like, that's perfect, because actually many times we get stuck with this concept that I have to get my syllabus done and the syllabus has to be the first thing I work on. When really, actually, we want to kind of think the other way around. We should be, as Suzanne said, she started doing her learning path first, right? Really organizing, what students should be learning and coming out with that clear pathway, not only in her head, but then also, to guide the students. And then from there, transfer all of that into your syllabus. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. Brandon, how about you?
Hi again, everyone. Of course, the forever question about syllabi, how do we get students to read our syllabi, engage with them, right? And I know that I've really rethought interacting with the syllabus in different ways that they can do that in both a remote space and also an on-the-ground space. There's also a really great video of Snoop Dogg yelling at students to read their syllabi. So if you want that, I can share that in the chat later. I use that as a reference, but then I quickly discover, I'm like, oh, this is a cool contemporary reference. And all my students are like, who's Snoop Dogg? So I'll just show quickly a couple of components of what I have done to change my syllabi and how I see it still working in fall. But a couple elements of it are, first and foremost, building it into my Canvas page, where it used to really just be on my Canvas page, pre-remote learning and all these considerations. But now I give them the option. Of course, they can still download it, but I really stress to them that it's a live course, meaning that it changes based off of students' needs, students' interests, students' backgrounds. It, of course, also changes based off of what's going on in our world. This was a constitutional law course, which I was teaching during the election. So as you can imagine, it was changing in real time. And so what I've started to do is I also integrate it now into our Canvas page as a Google Doc. And then that way I stress to them, and please feel free again to holler at me because it's telling me again that it's unstable internet. But it is saying what I do is I integrate it as a live Google Doc, and then that way, and I'll just transfer it over. They can open it on their own. They all have the ability to comment without being able to edit. Of course, I don't want them changing due dates or anything along those lines, right? Or overthrowing, but they can comment. And then also it's a way for us, it's a multimedia course where we listen to podcasts, readings, TED Talks. And so everything is integrated into the syllabus there so that they can resolve all comments previously, but they can comment real time whenever they want in case something's unclear about the syllabus or can be improved. And so this is an example of something that would often come up in the comment function. Like I put something that I thought was clear, like essay 1 to peer reviewer, but it was like, wait, how do we actually submit this? And then that way I could answer the questions there and it would be live for all the students to see that on the syllabus, and we could adjust it in real time to adapt to the needs. So just integrating it into Canvas so that you can put hyperlinks and then also have your students comment and respond to it are 2 minor changes that I made that really made a difference in terms of having students read and respond to our learning paths and our syllabi.
I love that, Brandon. That's awesome. So making the syllabus more of an interactive document pretty much, and that'll really get students to read it, because now, they're having conversations in there and they can easily, they know where to go if they have a question. And the nice thing about that being, collaborative is that they can probably answer each other's questions, right in the syllabus. So, if somebody else knows the answer, then you don't have to answer it. So, which is always great. So thank you so much for sharing that. Joel, how about you?
Yeah, I think multiple approaches and modes to go through the syllabus, I think, have been helpful. I would agree with what we've talked about in terms of pre-planning and then adding to your syllabus. But for me, just having multiple points of access, I'm in the arts. And so I tend to try to create a graphic type of a syllabi, which looks a little bit like a newspaper or a little bit more like a graphic novel framework that has kind of your core details, your text, everything essentially in there in a kind of an interesting way, so that people can engage with it in a way that is kind of in the creative mindset. I also always include a schedule that's broken down with some coding in terms of when things are due. And so it's kind of an outlay of where we're at within the scope of things on a 1-page framework. So if they want to be more analog and print it out, they can do that. But then all of this information is not only existing on that document, but also then in a written format on the Canvas website. So they can click on there and have literally a written out format of all the content as well, that they can go over and review, kind of a page by page breakdown, as well as all of that calendar, as I mentioned before, is on the main page with the deadlines on it, so that they can keep track of where we're on with that, which then is also reflected within the modules. So as we go into the modules, all of the calendar items also reflect in there, and also the assignment. So it's kind of all embedded within each other, but also gives you multiple ways to approach it and access it. Similar to, I'm really inspired by computer programs where you have multiple ways to accomplish the same things, whether it's hotkeys or whether through the menu. And so trying to kind of reflect that sort of framework on multiple levels and multiple approaches, so that they can, realize where we're at and kind of what needs to be done to move forward. And then I also go through kind of the key, broad strokes in class, so that we have a verbal framework as well. And it's still amazing, even though with all these things, I still have questions. And so I have an FAQ also on my Canvas site that people can ask questions amongst each other. Though I love the interactive Google Doc. I think that's spectacular. I'm going to probably utilize that in the future as well. So this is great today. We can all learn from each other and grow from it.
Can I mention one other thing?
Sure, go ahead, Suzanne. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to mention also, I got the syllabus format from DTEI, and there was already a template in place that had a lot of course policies that were super useful, that I hadn't had in a previous syllabus. So netiquette and office hours, communication, etc. Anyway, so that's available to you guys, and I highly recommend.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Yeah, that's we're going to be sharing the syllabus template with the audience in a little bit. But yeah, we have a lot of course policies, and you can literally just copy and paste it directly into your syllabus. So hopefully that saves you a bit of time. Joel, that was awesome. I love, seeing the different ways that you have, you can approach it to different types of learners, right? So those who are very visual would really like that visual format. Those who just want that straight out text or need like a screen reader to read it back to them, they have that option. And then you go through it in class again. So I love that. It's awesome. But yeah, like you said, even though we put it in a million places, they still miss things. So it's really funny, but we do the best that we can. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so for the very last question to kind of close out this panel, what are some challenges that you've encountered or lessons learned about this whole course design process in general that you'd like to share with the audience? Any tips, tricks, or best practices that you'd like to share? Anybody can go.
Sure, I'll chime in because I think my internet's finally not saying unstable, which I always say I prefer that it's yelling at me that my internet's unstable and not me personally, which is maybe not too far from the truth after 18 months, right? So I know that one big component for all of us and all of our students that I've been constantly thinking about and working through is technology fatigue, and how do we still continue, and obviously with some of these transitions that are coming for us, hopefully some of that subsides on its own. But a big component for me has been meeting students where they are in terms of the technology they're already familiar and comfortable with. And so I know I originally set out thinking I would use all of these different digital tools, but instead start with a survey of the technology that they currently use, are most comfortable using, and then think of ways to integrate those platforms into the classroom. So for example, it's a great question from my wonderful colleague Susan about Discord. So of course we use Discord to chat and to set up collaborative ways for them to be able to interact, but everything from Discord to LinkedIn to even just rebranding some of our Zoom office hours as virtual hangouts, because they had come to think of like Google Hangouts in these different spaces as ways that they could use it and feel comfortable. So that was one of my big takeaways from this space, is thinking about what types of technology they already use, already interact with, in order to avoid some of this cognitive fatigue and just all over physical, mental, emotional fatigue that so many of us are feeling.
I love that that's kind of removing one more barrier, right? Because you keep introducing new technologies to them that they may not be familiar with, that there's that aspect to having to learn those technologies. So that's awesome. Great advice. Thank you, Brandon.
And I made the mistake of thinking they were all tech experts and I was the one who was confused. And as long as I learned it, they would all be good to go. But then quickly discovered all of us were struggling with it in different ways. So streamlining it and keeping it as simple as possible.
Yep, definitely. All right, Joel, did you want to say something?
Sure. I tend to keep this feedback loop open. I think that's something that's been really emphasized within the program of just checking in and, before the class starts, sending them the syllabus and a welcome video, I think is really strong as a choice. Other things that I've utilized within the Canvas web space, which is pretty successful, as I do reflections after classes so that people can reflect back kind of what's sticking out for them or any sort of questions they have. Also, another great tool within this framework is I tend to have windows when things are due, just because of the nature of life and being unexpected. So things have a timeline to be shared. And then, if students are not up to speed, you can message them if they haven't submitted something to kind of check in on them through the Canvas functionality. And so there's a lot of different functions to check in with students and kind of see where they're at, especially if they're not keeping up, to make sure that they are aware of what's going on and try to figure out where the gaps are within their framework.
Yeah, that's awesome. We call that nudging, constantly nudging them, like, did you get this done? And it really is, really helps the students a lot, and especially in this type of remote, or online environment. All right, Suzanne, did you have anything to add?
Sure. As far as challenges go, I want to again emphasize to take advantage of the DTEI office hours. So whenever I've been working on something for a little bit of time and I can't figure it out, this happened like last week, I couldn't integrate perusal through Canvas, and just an appointment with Fanny in a half an hour, and I was up and it was almost all done. So I've done that a number of times to work through those kinds of technical challenges. So really useful resource. And then we were coming again from such a place where we had no electronic presence before the pandemic. students would come into the lab and they would be given a lab manual and they would work out of a hard copy lab manual. So we had a long way to go. So that being said, I really took advantage of getting everything electronic. So now all the quizzes are electronic and Canvas grades them for you. This takes a huge amount of work away from the TAs, and not to mention we don't have all this paper, which is fantastic. Everything's now funneling into the grade book, whereas before it was all parsed in different places and then went into Excel. Rubrics for grading. So this is something Fanny really had to push me on because I just didn't want to take all my rubrics in Word and put them into Canvas because it seemed like a lot of work, but in the end it's awesome just to have it right there in Canvas when you're grading. So I highly recommend rubrics. So really, again, to echo again what Brandon and Joel have said, to take advantage of those things that we can do in Canvas was a huge eye opener for me with all of this.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And yes, definitely, you know, if anybody in the audience ever needs help with any course design process, anything like that, we're very happy to help you here at DTI. So we'll have the link to the office hours put up at the end of this workshop. But thank you all so much. So that does conclude our panel for today. So let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for, you know, sharing your course design experiences with us. You know, if you have any additional questions actually for any of our specific panelists, we'll have breakout rooms at the end of this workshop and you can join them for Q&A at that point. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so in this next section, we'd actually like to talk to you a little bit more about syllabus design. And, you know, now that we're doing all different types of modes of teaching in the fall, we have a few suggested policies and things that you can include in your syllabus. And like Suzanne had mentioned, you know, we have a syllabus template that we'd like to show you and you can easily implement that right into your course. So first, before we do that, we'd like to do a quick poll, and we're going to do this poll on Poll Everywhere. So actually, if one of the instructional designers, can you please copy and paste this link into the chat? That'd be awesome. But you could submit your answers at pollev.com/DTI support. And the question for you is, what is one word or phrase you would use to define the function of the syllabus? All right, love that one-stop shop, a guide. Right, so this is actually set up as a word cloud. So expectations, guide, motivate. Right. Okay, so that word guide is really popping out. Right, and this is kind of like a cool exercise you could even do with your own students. You know, I've had some instructors use, you know, what's one word or phrase you'd use to describe. I think she had a medieval plague class, so the plague, you know, and this can be a very powerful way to see their answers. So I see course, structure, guide, yeah, contract, see that too, excited, foundation. And then I can even actually adjust this a bit so we can see these in clusters. So in one-stop shop, motivate students, get them excited about what they're going to learn, a roadmap, foundation, awesome, contract, see that a lot. Okay, great. All right, it's awesome to see these responses and policies. Yes, that's a big part about the syllabus, right? Okay, so, and the reason actually why this poll actually was provided by a poll that was done at Harvard University with a cohort of undergraduate and graduate students. And they found, or these were their most common responses. So some students said a recipe book, a user's guide, contract, which we saw come up a lot, guide came up a lot, and even one student said a provocation. So, so it's very interesting to see, you know, what exactly is the purpose of your syllabus, right? So when you're thinking about how you design the syllabus, it's really good to be reminded that the syllabus really serves many audiences, many purposes, and you know, you want to really think about what you want the purpose of your syllabus to be when you're designing it. All right, so now I'm going to actually pass the torch back over to Megan.
Hi, everyone. I hope that little exercise will give you some idea to really start thinking about syllabus design. So right now, I'm going to share my screen again. And Jennifer, if you could put that link in the chat, that would be great. So we're gonna start talk a little bit about syllabus components. You are the expert of designing a syllabus. You know, you've been teaching so many years that is no brainer. But right now, the reason why we want to touch a little bit about the elements is because we're trying to teach different modes, flip, hybrid, online. How do we modify the syllabus to kind of support these kind of learning? So that's kind of think about that before we jump into some suggestions. So if you could click on the link in the chat that Jennifer just put it in. And then, you know, there's a second question here. So I'm gonna, if you go to page 2, there's another box for you to put information in here. So page 2 here, what are the essential syllabus elements in your opinion? So why don't you just go ahead to type in what kind of things that you like to put in the syllabus? So we have people say course learning objectives, photographs and graphs so that student, it's easier for student to yeah, like a newsletter. Some faculty like to make their syllabus more like a newsletter, so it stands out in a way to motivate students to read syllabus. Yes, because you know one of the most challenging thing for faculty is students, they don't read syllabus carefully. Then they keep asking the same question that are already listed in the syllabus. So we have some faculty talk about policies, grading information, contact information is important. You really need to let students know how to contact you, especially during the pandemic, right? Course learning, assignment description and deadlines, lecture topics. These are wonderful components. See, I told you, you are the expert of course syllabus. So people are very busy typing. I will let you continue to share your thoughts. One of the idea I want to share with you that this is a really nice activity. You can also implement it with your class, with your students. Allow them to participate before you jump into a topic. So their mic could be with you while you're presenting a topic. So let me start sharing with you this one document here. There is a document here about how to make the best syllabus ever. So you can look at this infographic and kind of get an idea about what kind of possible components you can use syllabus to motivate students learning. And I have another information on the left, letting you know that, you know, include a syllabus with important element features, learning outcomes, expectations, policies. All these are wonderful things to help your student get familiar with your course and onboard them with a very clear mindset about your expectations. And then all these links in the slides, feel free to click on it. You'll get different kinds of documents. But I want to point it out that the reason why we need to have a very clear syllabus is because we want to make sure that this is also aligned with a rubric that different kinds of possible reasons why we want to do a syllabus. So I want to kind of point that out to you. And now, because you are all have a good idea about syllabus, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I do want you to know that DTEI developed a syllabus checklist for multimodal teaching. So now we're teaching different kinds of modes. So it's really hard to figure out what would be a good information to include, what would be information you should take in now. If you download this document, you will be able to kind of use the checklist to figure out which one that works for you. This particular checklist is for you to consider. So you don't have to check every single one, only the one that works for you. And then you can look at your syllabus if you provide that information. If you look at this slide on the right-hand side, you realize there's more information provided to you, especially there is a article talking about how to develop a flipped classroom syllabi. And there's another one talking about hybrid syllabus samples. I know you probably want to see how other faculty build their hybrid course syllabi. So there's some samples here. So you can actually look at it. The last one is really about online and hybrid syllabus template from Ohio University. So hopefully these resources will give you some ideas to modify your syllabus to make it more aligning with the modes of teaching you're going to deliver in fall. So now let me go back to my previous slide. Here is the document that faculty was sharing in the panel. You can click on this link to download the syllabus template that DTI developed for you to fit in different modes of teaching. As you can see, we also put the COVID-19 information in there, just like what Suzanne shared. These are CAN languages, we developed it for you, so you don't have to build everything from scratch. You can just download this document and modify to fit in your teaching. So feel free to take advantage of these two documents. I want to also acknowledge that even though DTI has a course template created last year for remote teaching, and our instructional designer, Fanny Tai and Kaylee Bays, they modified this syllabus for fall because we're returning back to the campus that everybody's going to teach different kinds of modes. So let's give them a round of applause and thank them their effort putting this revision together. And another slide I want to talk about is like course policy. What do you want to put in the syllabus? So there is an article, you can click on this link to read about things that you want to put in the syllabus. You know, do you put too much, not enough? You know, what would be suitable to put in the syllabus? This is a very good article for you to rethink about that. Another thing is that we highly recommend you to put COVID emergency language in your syllabus in fall. There's some CAN languages, like I said, we already developed, so feel free to take advantage of that. It doesn't hurt to have a mirrored information put on Canvas as well. So if students miss reading the syllabus, at least there's a second chance they can see that in the syllabus. It would be a perfect information to put in the week 0 session to onboard students before class begins. Starting in fall 2021, all UCI students will have to enable Duo on their phone in order to access Canvas and other technologies. So faculty and staff have been doing that for about a year or so, and students did not have to do it before. Now, starting in fall, they will have to. So it is very important that you include Duo information in the syllabus and also in the week 0 information. It may also be nice if you record a course overview video or like a week 0 video to onboard your student and remind them that they should get that set up before the semester, before the quarter begin, so they don't end up have trouble access Canvas, and it will take time for them to set it out. So this is very important for you to remind your student. Another thing is that because you're going to teach different modes in fall, sometimes you may have some student taking remote because they couldn't come back to class, and you have another set of students in the classroom, so it's kind of confusing. So it is very important that you set out a clear communication expectations in the syllabus, letting them know what your expectations are when they study in the class, when they study in hybrid online, or they do it remote, so they are clear about what you're expecting them to communicate with you, or they're expecting, you know, how you will be communicating with them. That's very important. Finally, we always want to embed inclusive excellence in our teaching, because it's a really critical topic that many of us are still trying to explore. So consider some of these languages that we provided to you and make revision as needed. But this will be a nice session adding to your syllabus as well. Finally, you know, we want to remind you about accessibility is part of the inclusive teaching. So there's some guidelines how you can make your syllabus accessible. this is something that we can show you how to do that hands-on tomorrow in the group office hours. So if you want to learn how to make your syllabus accessible, your Word document accessible, we'll be happy to help you. But here, there's some information you can learn that by yourself as well. So I went through these information pretty quickly, just so you can read it on your own. Most of them are CAN languages, so I don't have to go through all the information. Finally, I add a slide with this very interesting YouTube video to encourage students to read the syllabus. You can feel free to include that in your Canvas site. It's nice that we now have a Canvas site, so we can embed that video there to encourage them to read the syllabus. And there's some interesting images. You can also include that in your Canvas site. The only thing I want to remind you is that if you add any images, make sure you don't just upload the image for your Canvas course site, but you want to give a alternative text. So it is also a best practice for accessibility. So for example, if you put this image in your course, make sure you type in the alt text with all these texts in there. So the screen reader, for people who need the screen reader to help them to study, the screen reader will be able to read the image for the student. So that's just a little reminder.